Having a local television station license is essentially a license to print money. It's essentially inherited like a country club membership and passed within families or within corporate families. If you don't already have one, it's just about impossible to get one. And if you have one, it's just about impossible to lose one. The worst that happens to a television station from time to time is that it gets fined for violating standards of public decency, which is the FCC's province to do. But even there, it's essentially a wrist slap compared to the amount of profit that they're raking in. Local television station ownership is one of the most profitable parts of the entire entertainment industry. So no one wants to give that up, no matter how much they badmouth the difficulties of the business. And because they are not held accountable for the standards of localism, diversity, and competition, then there's no reason to fear the wrath of the public or the Congress. They just literally send a postcard in every 8 years and get it renewed. There has been a movement recently in Congress to change that, to say that stations should only have 3 years to hold their licenses, or that stations should earn the renewal of their licenses by demonstrating to the public through providing, for example, on the internet, their program content, so people can see whether they have fulfilled their localism, diversity, and competition requirements, and judge them and be held accountable for that. But that's really just the first embryonic start of a movement which, if anything, the stations and their networks and their lobbyists would be delighted to crush. News used to be a lost leader for companies that provided entertainment. They had divisions, and the news division was not a profit center. News was there to fulfill a public interest. But ever since in the middle of the 80s, 60 Minutes on CBS began to turn a profit, all of the networks and all of their affiliates decided that news needed to be a profit center just like every other part of the business. And as a consequence, what they did was to chase their audience to the bottom. Instead of saying there is a balance between the kind of information that people need to know to be good citizens and the kind of information that's fun to know about, instead they decided to feed us a diet of pure ice cream and let us get our broccoli somewhere else. Instead of deciding that their brilliant storytelling skills, their ice cream, could be applied to politics, instead of saying that the drama of public life, of great issues, was full of suspense, full of big, oversized personalities, and was plenty entertaining, instead what they decided was that entertainment only could come from covering things like crime and celebrity trials and chases and cats and firemen half a country away. And as a consequence, the amount of hard news in a broadcast decreased and the amount of soft news increased. At the same time, because stations are cross-owned by networks which have entertainment schedules, the pressure to turn news programs into vehicles of cross-promotion for entertainment has only increased. So what you'll see on a local station's early evening news is stay tuned for tonight's episode of House or Heroes or ER or whatever the show is, and then they'll do something to promote it, which is allegedly a news peg, and then later that night they'll do something after it, and then next morning, most famously in the case of CBS, they'll devote half of the morning show to breathless interviewers with the survivors of Survivor last night. There was a famous study famous to me anyway, study in 1974, which looked at the California Democratic gubernatorial election. There was a woman who studied every media market in the state, every show that aired on the news to see how much that election was covered. And in 1974, the percent of news given over to the gubernatorial election, she declared, was a truly shocking, devastating, end of democracy number, and that was 2.5%. Well, I repeated that study in 1998. And what I found was that the number had fallen from 2.5% of the news to 0.45% of the news. That's not long enough to clear your throat. And that's as much airtime as the average station in California 10 years ago almost now gave to covering politics. The belief on the part of many stations, not all stations, there are good people trying to do their best, but on the part of many stations is that covering politics and public affairs is ratings poison. And very few of them give their public a chance to say, no, you're wrong. If you give us good stuff, we will come.